Yeah. Okay, we're going to get started with our next presentation. BShipp is going to talk to us about the judicial system.
All right, as Mr. Carraway kind of introduced me, I'm BShipp, and I'm talking about prosecution, the overarching effects of the judicial system. So to kind of start off, I want to talk about my research question, which is really the focal point of my entire research. And that was, what are the best ways that governments can prevent criminal activity among at-risk children? And throughout this entire presentation, you'll really be hearing me say at-risk children a lot. So I kind of want to go ahead and give you guys a loose definition. An at-risk child is any child that is defined as having at least one of these four categories, and that is poor school performance, mental or emotional health issues, physical abuse or neglect, or they are a victim of either drug use or abuse. So kind of one of the main things that these at-risk youth have together is that they are in an environment that is not conducive to their health. And for example, one of these main environments is their family life. Of at-risk children, 65% have one or more parents that are incarcerated, 35% have family members that have an alcohol problem, 24% have family members that have a drug addiction, and 23% have family members that have an emotional or mental health issue. Likewise, another kind of a sub-question to my main research question was whether or not that institutionalized care, essentially group homes, are especially conducive into fostering an environment that is particularly detrimental to the development and the development of at-risk behaviors in these youth. And I found a lot of stuff, but just to kind of hit the main points, 10 to 15% of children, and this is out of 8 million people worldwide in institutionalized care, 10 to 15% will commit suicide before age 18, 60% of the girls will become prostitutes, and 70% of the men will become hardened criminals. So what are the solutions? And I like to break down my solutions into 3 different categories. What I call early prevention strategies, which work to establish a pattern, establish a precedent of positive behaviors before negative behaviors can take root. Then you have institutionalized care reform, which is pretty self-explanatory. And the third option is late intervention strategies. And late intervention strategies are very different than early prevention strategies. Early prevention strategies are definitely the most ideal because it's a lot easier to establish a pattern of positive behaviors than it is to break a pattern of negative behaviors. So kind of one of the main solutions I found, and that is for all both early intervention and late prevention, is Boys and Girls Club as well as other after-school programs. I was astounded at how significant that Boys and Girls Club can have an impact on the youth, especially the at-risk youth that it encounters. In every foreseeable category that I mentioned that goes along with at-risk behaviors, the risk factors go down. Drug use, alcohol use, willing to try tobacco, truancy goes down. Talking everything from things like GPA and things from school performance, likelihood of going to a college, all that goes up. And I think that Boys and Girls Club is one of the most underfunded and underutilized resources that we have today in America in dealing with at-risk youth. Yeah, second kind of program I want to go into is nurse-family partnership programs. Here in Virginia, we do have this, but they're kind of more grant-related other than in other states. The 2, I guess, big states that came up in my research was both Colorado and New York, as having the most comprehensive and best funded programs. Now, what these do is these work by taking what is usually single unwed mothers, oftentimes under the age of 18, and almost exclusively from the lowest socioeconomic points, and it gives them access to top-notch quality care. And I'm talking in-home visitations from anything from nurses to midwives to doctors to psychiatrists, and they need this, as well as offering them references and resources to help them not only get jobs, but apply to further and higher education. If they need to get their GED, it helps them along with that. And as you can see, the results are quite significant. Kind of the last solution I want to talk about, and this was probably the most interesting study I came across in my research. It's known as the Elmira study. It was conducted in Elmira, New York, over the span of 40 years, starting in the 1960s and going up to the 2000s. What it did is it took a group of 3 and 4-year-olds that had already been identified as having at-risk behaviors and separated into 2 groups, control group and an experimental group. The control group continued with K through 12 education, bearing those of that, whereas the experimental group was placed in a preschool system. And then after incremental along the way, and after 40 years, the results were then examined. And it was found that of the preschoolers, for their arrest rates for drug-related crimes were 14% compared to 34% of those who did not attend preschool. Of the at-risk 3 and 4-year-olds, for violent crimes, they had an arrest rate of 36% compared to 58%. And by the age of 40, only 28% of those who were identified as at-risk by the age of 3 and 4 had spent more than a year in jail, compared to a whopping 52% of the at-risk preschoolers who are the at-risk children who did not go to preschool. So I'm here kind of want to switch gears a little bit and go into my community service and my legacy. I did both at the Boys and Girls Club here in Orange. If there's one thing that I kind of want to, I hope that you guys gotten from my research part of it is how significant Boys and Girls Club can be on these children. So what I did is I went there at least once a week for at least an hour every week, day, since October. And I kind of helped them out with something called Power Hour, and that was I helped them with their homework. Tried not to get them, they're really good at getting me to do their homework. There's only so many times you can say 12 plus 3 is 15 before you just want to start whispering it to them. And then, you know, I read books to them, discussed the merits of sharks versus dinosaurs, which would mean if they ate each other. Who knows? And then that's kind of where my legacy came into play. There's one thing that Ms. Donnelly over there, the director, is how significant these relationships can have on the impact. Not only, obviously, not everyone who goes to Boys and Girls Club is at risk, but even the ones that aren't at risk, how significant these relationships can be. So for my legacy, I worked alongside the Leadership Club and trying to initiate a tutoring program, which every week a group of people would go over there. And so far, I've had varying levels of success. Started quite high, kind of tapered off a little towards the end, but we definitely have a few members that go over there every weekend, you know, do the same stuff, maybe minus the sharks and dinosaurs arguments. And then the other portion of my community service was, again, similar to Lindsay, my work with the Beckett Children's Society through the OCHS's Leadership Club. And what I did there is we had 2 main projects. And what we did there is we had 2 main projects, and only one has been completed as yet due to snow delays and the bureaucratic paperwork that is apparently necessary in order to start a 50-50 raffle here. It's going to hopefully start after spring break. So the work is ongoing. But the main one that we've already completed was what we call Change for Change, which we collected change around the high school for people, and all the proceeds went to the Beckett Children's Society to help them realize the goal of building a sports court for the Beckett Primary School. So from here, I kind of want to switch into my internship. Now, I did my internship with Culpeper County and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office under the supervision of Miss Megan Frederick. She is the elected Commonwealth Attorney in Culpeper, Virginia. And, you know, although this is kind of an ideal day for everyone, an ideal day for anyone who works is a day where they don't have any work. But for a prosecutor, it's very different because it means that there's been no crimes committed. And although that's kind of an idealistic utopian society, which man is flawed, it's not going to happen. Days where there is less work is especially significant. And if anything from my interview with Ms. Kaufman's sister, AUSA Heather Carlton, taught me is how important education is in identifying and helping out these at-risk youth, because it's the at-risk youth that oftentimes or not will be the criminals of the future. So looking into more the criminal side, one word that would perfectly sum up my time there is files and paperwork. I've never seen more files and paperwork in my entire life. If you have a speeding ticket, you have a file. My first day in court, I was with one of the assistant Commonwealth attorneys, Ms. Margarita Wood, and I sat at the prosecutor's table right next to a stack of files this big, about 80 files, and my job was to take one out when the judge would call the name and organize it back and take notes if the case was dismissed, if it was moved to another time, any sort of that thing. I made little notations for her. She told me what she wanted me to write down, and so she would have it right there in the file. So when she goes back over, she knows what she's looking at. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, what the court does is the actual courthouse is used for civil cases, and prosecutors, what they work on is they work on preparing their arguments for the next days. Now, this may seem a little dull to some people, but I really enjoy the art of litigation, the art of constructing an argument. So for me, doing the research on the actual case was very interesting. Now, I can't go into too many details because the court case hasn't happened yet. I don't want to give away any secrets. But Miss Frederick helped let me work on an upcoming murder case, a stabbing. And so my job was to go into LexisNexis as well as look at legal books and pull out statutes, previously argued court cases, anything that I thought that might help her win the case. For example, I would pull out something that was like in 1984 in Johnson v. Idaho, the federal court system, the state court system in Idaho established that a stabbing with a 9-inch serrated blade constitutes at least 15 years in jail. She could then use that information to argue her point. I had a really enjoyable experience there. Ms. Frederick and I hit it off once. I'm going to help her with her campaign this summer for re-election. Oh, and that's the now Honorable Judge David Barreto. He got promoted to be a judge that week. I'd like to say I played a key part in that. If there's one thing that I took away from this experience is I'd always known I'd want to go into law of some sort. Now, whether it is prosecution, defense law, you see OJ there, corporate law, the money's at, or law enforcement. I've always thought that it would be a good fit for me and something that I would really enjoy, but I was never sure which one of these 4 avenues I wanted to go down. Or really if I could handle prosecution. I mean, say if you make a blunder, a possible criminal walks, and that's on you for the rest of your life. But if there's one thing that this week taught me is if that is an avenue, if that is a road that I want to pursue in the future after college and after law school, then that is an option that I think I would be good at and I would enjoy a lot. So if there's one piece of advice I'd like to offer the upcoming government school seniors, it is, I worked on my project during the summer, and I think that was one of the smartest moves I made. It really, really helped me take a more relaxed pace during the year. I watched some of my classmates, start to scramble a little bit as it got to be October and November as things weren't lining up as they wanted to. It was nice for me just to be able to take a more, slower, cautious approach because I already had that main portion out of the way. Anyone have any questions?
With the Elmira study about the preschool, why do you think there's such a difference in the statistics? Why does the preschool make a difference with incarceration rate or crime rate?
I think there's a multitude of reasons. One of the at-risk factors I described first was education levels, and preschool just gives some added edge to anyone who's entering this kind of K-12 education. I think, and now the Elmira studies parents were assigned, but I think that in the real world, parents who are willing to take the extra step, pay the extra money if they can, and put those kids in this education system, the parents that are more likely to make sure their child succeeds.
So I actually didn't have a question until Ms. Bridget asked hers. So I think something that what you were saying, and something that just is frustrating for me to hear is like how this seems like something that has a really well-defined, not solution, but like fix. But it's like the funding and the awareness and like the fact that I think Oklahoma, which is at least voting record-wise one of the most conservative states in the nation, is also one of the few that has state-funded preschool, and they basically had to trick people into getting that passed in the legislature. So it's like, through law, do you think there's any way you can still contribute to make this something that, like, it feels like we shouldn't have to ask people to donate their spare change to make this a problem. Like, it seems like such a thing like we should just want to do as a society. Like, how do you maybe help that problem?
Well, I think that a lot of it goes to the nature of politics itself, and that there are, in order, there's a set amount of funding. In order to fund something, you got to pay for something else. Then you have, people who are in support of that, lobbyists in support of that, and so political gridlock is, I think, a lot of things that prevents some of these social aspects from taking place. And there's the fact that, here in Virginia, it's done grants through private organizations, and Now, I did not really look into whether or not the grant sort of system is more effective than the directly state-sponsored programs. That would be a very interesting study to look at. I think that would be one thing that would determine if Virginia needs to, or any other states need to allocate that money to then take the private part of the private sector and put it into public control.
I have a different, going back to the different, do you think that there is, if we make harsher laws on parents that cause the, you mentioned about the at-risk, the reason most of it is because of parents. If you put that, do you think if we made harsher laws on parents that we would bring down the number of at-risk?
Yes and no. I think that in some cases, in any population, you have a set percentage that no matter the consequences, they're not going to be willing to step up to the plate. And I think that a lot of parents of at-risk youth who have some issues themselves want to do the right thing. I'm a firm believer in optimism of people, and that people are a big part. I think that most people really want to do the big thing. I just don't think they have the resources to know how. So that's why the nurse-parent partnership programs, it really provides them with the resources to not only improve their lives but improve the lives of their child. And I think that honestly is one of the most key programs.